Nawaz, and today we will learn about different types of scopes in JavaScript. So in general, in your programming journey, you might have seen there are some conditional blocks like if and else, there are some while loops, there are some code parentheses. So how this entire thing works. So I will give you a gist about it. So in JavaScript, we have four type of scopes defined. The first one is block scope, the second one is functional scope, third one is the global scope, and fourth one is local scope. So we will go to each of these one by one. So we'll get to know about how this works entirely. So we will start with block scope first. So I have already written down some code, so it would be like easier for you and me. So this block scope is introduced after the ES6 with let and const keyword, and variable declared with where keyword cannot have block scope. So starting with this, we have two variables declared. First one is a let a, which is 5, second one is const b, which is also equals to 5. And when we try to print it using this, so you can see that yes, in block we would be getting 5 as a response for our let and const both blocks, and for the outside this scope, if we try to invoke it, we will get an error. So if we want to run this, we just need to run it with node command. We need to give us the file of our JS file. So if we run it like this, node block scope hyphen block scope.js. So here you can see we get the first line in console, which is a in block scope is 5 and the b in block scope is 5. And onto this third line, we are getting that reference error a is not defined. This happens because for variable a, it does not exist outside of this scope. Now we will move on to our second type of scope, which is functional scope. So each variable which is declared within function, it creates a new scope, and variable like where, let and const are not accessible outside the function. So for example, here I have created a function called var function, and I declared a variable called variable a, which is equals to Adi, and in console log I'm just printing it. And first time when I invoke this function, then it would run, and after that I created a new console log line where I am trying to reference the same variable a outside of its function scope. So let's check how this works. To run this command again, we need to write it like this: node function scope So see, here our inside function is executed as we expected, like Adi, but for the second console log line, we are again getting an error, which is reference error a is not defined. So this means whatever var, let or const we declare inside this functional scope, it's not accessible outside this scope. So now we move on to our next type, which is global scope. So global scope is general, whatever you have written outside any kind of function is called a global scope variable. For example, you can see here I have written this variable a equals to 1, another variable is let b equals to 2, like outside at the topmost level of my code. So these are not coming under any kind of function or conditional scope. The third variable we have is const c equals to 3. So again, if I try to call these functions first with their default calling like this, console.log variable function a, and when within this function scope I declared another variable with the same name and I am trying to invoke that also. So we will see how it will give us the result, and I tried this technique for all these three, for our variable and let And for const, I have already skipped it because you can't declare a constant multiple times. It would again give you the same result only. So to run this, we again need to run it using our node command. Node global scope. So here we get our answer like global A inside variable function. It is coming as undefined, and after declaring variable b, we are getting its value as 4, and with the global b inside let function we are getting it undefined, and within the local block we are getting it as 5, which we override. And for the third our const, it is again accessible within this scope whenever we try to call it like this. So you will get it for global scope, whatever declare at outside level, it's considered easy to accessible across our code, and it's ideal. We should ideally use all our constant hardcode declaration inside this block. So now we will move on to our final but not the least important. It's called local scope. So within the local scope, what we do, we just write a code module inside the another conditional module like this. Here I have written this block, which is again inside a function. So the scope is only local to this one only. So how this works? For example, I have declared two variables. Let a equals to first data, b equals to second data, let c equals to third data, and d equals to fourth data. And when I try to print the c and d, I am getting the result as expected. But what happens when I try to call it outside this block? So let's check. To again run this in node, we need to run our node command with node local scope and local scope file. So here you can see my code block, which is internally local, is running successfully like for C and D. But for outside this scope, when I try to call variable A and variable B, those are running fine. But when I try to call variable C and variable D, in that case I am getting C is not defined and D is also not defined, because it does not exist for this outside this scope. So this scope is called local scope. And one interesting thing about local scope is it creates a new scope every time as compared to the local scope. Okay guys, so I think you might have learned something useful today, and I hope you enjoy it. Do like, comment and subscribe to our coding channel, and whatever new tutorials or programming concept that you want to understand, you can let us know in the comments and we will work on it. Bye.